You tell yourself it's harmless. Just 5 minutes. Just checking a message. Just one more scroll. But when you finally look up from the screen, something feels off. The day is gone. Your mind is foggy. And deep down, you feel emptier than before. What if the real addiction wasn't to the screen itself, but to the escape it offers? This video is not about blaming technology. It's about revealing the invisible cost of using it to avoid yourself. You'll discover why your endless scrolling isn't a sign of weakness, but of pain. How your digital self, carefully curated for likes and approval, may be hiding the most wounded parts of you. And why healing doesn't begin with a detox, but with a quiet revolution inside your mind. Carl Jung once said, "We don't become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." And in this journey, we'll walk through that darkness with compassion, not shame. You'll learn how your trauma, your unmet needs, your fear of rejection, all became fuel for your compulsive behavior. And more importantly, how to step out of that cycle. This is not a video about quitting social media. It's a video about quitting the performance, the mask, the illusion. So you can finally reconnect, not with the internet, but with your soul. Because you're not addicted to your phone. You're addicted to forgetting who you really are. There's a moment, quiet, heavy, when you put your phone down and suddenly feel nothing. No excitement, no inspiration, just a subtle emptiness crawling back in. That's not boredom. That's what you've been trying to avoid. What if your addiction to social media isn't about entertainment, but about anesthesia? Carl Jung believed that addiction arises not from weakness, but from the absence of meaning. And in today's world, that void gets filled with noise, infinite scroll, fleeting likes, notifications, validation. Each ping promises relief, not from silence, but from the ache inside it. You're not addicted to your phone. You're addicted to what it lets you forget. It rewards stimulation. You're praised for being productive, connected, informed, but never for being still. The dopamine trap of social media works because it hijacks your survival instinct. Every scroll is like a hit, anticipation, reward, crash. And so you scroll again, and again. But Jung warned us, what we fail to confront in the conscious mind, we project into the world. This isn't just unconscious scrolling, it's unconscious avoidance. You're not just passing time, you're running from yourself. And the more you run, the more exhausted and disconnected you feel. That's the price of compulsive behavior masked as casual habit. Behind every addiction, there's a wound. Gabor Maté said, "Don't ask why the addiction, ask why the pain." And when it comes to social media, the pain is often invisible. Loneliness hidden behind selfies, insecurity masked by confidence, rejection softened by the illusion of attention. The digital self is curated, polished, filtered, applauded. But it's not you. It's who you think you need to be loved. That false identity, Jung would say, is the persona, a mask we create to survive the demands of the external world. The danger is when the mask becomes permanent and the real self forgotten beneath it. Most people don't realize they're addicted. They say, "I'm just checking my messages," or "I'm just relaxing." But notice how your body reacts when you try to stop. The twitch to reach, the discomfort in silence, the fear of missing something. This is spiritual disconnection disguised as leisure, and the system is designed for it. Algorithms prey on your attention, notifications interrupt your presence, and your soul gradually gets drowned in stimulation. Jung taught that a fragmented psyche leads to suffering, and social media fragments us, not just cognitively but spiritually. You're present everywhere, and yet nowhere. Known by everyone, and yet not even known by yourself. This isn't just a generational problem. It's a human one, especially among the working class, those constantly pressured to produce, survive, provide. Social media becomes a free and fast escape, a moment of control in a life full of demands. But this relief is deceptive. It doesn't heal, it hides, it numbs. And just like substance addiction, it feeds the cycle. Stress, scroll, detachment, shame, repeat. Jung called this the loop of unconscious repetition, where you replay pain instead of resolving it. What begins as a harmless break turns into a ritual of forgetting who you are. And worse, accepting the illusion as reality. The most dangerous part of this cycle is how normalized it has become. Everyone is doing it, so no one questions it. But deep down, people feel it. The fatigue, the comparison, the quiet grief of a life half-lived. You weren't made for constant exposure. Your nervous system wasn't built for hyperstimulation. And your soul can't thrive under artificial light. Jung believed healing begins when the unconscious becomes conscious. When you see the behavior not as random, but as symbolic. That endless scrolling isn't laziness. It's your spirit begging for rest. Not more content, more connection, not more followers, more presence. But what are you supposed to do, right? Delete all your accounts? Go live in a cabin in the woods? That's not the point. The point is awareness. Compassionate awareness. Gabor Maté reminds us, people don't heal by willpower. They heal through reconnection, with their feelings, with their values, with their pain. You can begin with one moment of pause, one evening without screens, one walk without headphones. And as you reconnect with your body, your breath, your boredom, you'll start to remember what it feels like to exist without performing. That's the first step in the individuation journey. Because this isn't about quitting Instagram. It's about remembering who you were before the noise. It's about becoming whole again. Not perfect, not polished, just real. And yes, it's uncomfortable. Jung said, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain, but this pain is sacred. It's the sign that something in you still wants to wake up, still wants to live fully." And that's what we'll explore next. How childhood disconnection, hidden traumas, and unmet needs make us crave these digital distractions, and how the healing always starts with remembering the parts of ourselves we abandoned along the way. Nobody wants to be rejected, but some people spend their entire lives trying to avoid it. And in the age of social media, avoiding rejection has become a daily performance. Jung called it the persona, the social mask we wear to survive. On Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. This mask becomes our identity. You post the best photo. You edit the caption 10 times. You wait for the likes, the comments, the validation. But deep inside, a question keeps echoing. If people knew the real me, would they still care? Would they still stay? The addiction to social media is often just the addiction to not being abandoned. Growing up, many people learn early that certain parts of them are not acceptable. Maybe you were too emotional, too intense, too quiet, too weird. So you adapted. You became what others expected. You disconnected from the self to protect it. And as Gabor Maté explains, disconnection is the root of all addiction. Social media amplifies this fracture. It rewards the polished version and ignores the raw one. You post a vulnerable thought, and it gets ignored. You post a filtered selfie, and it gets praise. The message is clear. Be who we like, or disappear. That's not connection. That's conditional belonging. For someone working 2 jobs, exhausted by daily life, this digital approval becomes a lifeline, a quick high in a heavy world. But here's the paradox. The more you perform, the less you feel real. You lose track of your digital self versus your true self. And soon, you need the next post, the next comment, just to remember you exist. Jung would say your shadow, the parts of you you've repressed, starts to grow hungry. It shows up as anxiety, self-loathing, emptiness. Not because you failed, but because your soul is tired of being ignored. Your false identity is not a sustainable home. This is where compulsive behavior creeps in. You keep checking your phone, not out of joy, but out of fear. Fear that you've missed something. Fear that you've become invisible. Fear that you no longer matter. But what you're truly craving isn't attention. It's authenticity. The freedom to exist without having to earn your place. Jung believed that the more we identify with our persona, the more disconnected we become from the self. And when that disconnection deepens, so does the addiction. Because without our true self to return to, we seek comfort in illusions. And social media offers them in abundance. Think about it. How often do you delete a post that didn't get enough likes? How often do you compare your life to someone else's highlight reel? These behaviors may seem harmless, but they reflect a deeper ache. A desire to be seen, to be loved, to be chosen, without performance. Jung's concept of individuation was never about becoming something new. It was about remembering what you've always been, beneath the masks. Gabor Maté would say healing starts when we feel safe enough to show up as we are. But the digital world rarely gives us that space, so we hide, and then forget we're hiding. This is especially dangerous for people with unresolved trauma. If you grew up not feeling seen, the internet becomes a substitute parent, one that gives instant attention, but no real love. You learn to chase numbers instead of connection. Metrics become your mirror, but mirrors can lie. They reflect the surface, not the soul. And over time, the gap between who you are and who you pretend to be becomes unbearable. Jung warned that this kind of inner split leads to neurosis, the soul's rebellion against the lie. Social media didn't cause your pain, but it became the perfect place to hide from it. But here's the truth. Hiding never brings peace. It brings fatigue. You're exhausted because you're constantly on. You're not resting. You're managing your image, curating a version of yourself you can barely recognize. Jung wrote that healing begins with radical honesty, facing the shadow, even if it scares you. And Maté reminds us, true connection requires vulnerability. But to be vulnerable, you need safety. That's the missing piece for most people online. Not more followers, not more filters, but a place where they can be real without fear, without punishment, without the need to earn love. And that's where we're heading next. Because the solution isn't deleting your accounts. It's rebuilding your connection to yourself. It's finding out why the mask felt necessary in the first place. Why you believed that being you wasn't enough. And most importantly, how to start peeling off the layers of performance so your real self can breathe again. In the next part of this journey, we'll explore how that reconnection happens. Not through detox or discipline, but through spiritual transformation. Because as Jung and Maté both suggest, healing isn't about fixing the addict. It's about listening to the message behind the addiction. Healing doesn't always mean letting go of others. Sometimes it means letting go of who you thought you had to be. Carl Jung taught that real transformation begins not with escape, but with confrontation. Not with leaving the world, but with leaving the illusion. And in today's reality, one of the most seductive illusions is the digital self, a version of you made for approval, efficient, polished, acceptable, but not alive. The danger is that the more this version is rewarded, the more the true self fades. You're not addicted to your phone. You're addicted to who it lets you pretend to be. People try everything, deleting apps, turning off notifications, setting screen limits, but the craving always finds a way back. Why? Because the phone was never the source of the pain, only the cover. Gabor Maté warns us, you cannot heal what you continue to numb, and you cannot reconnect with life if you're still escaping yourself. Jung called this the fragmentation of the psyche, when the self is split between what's shown and what's real. Healing begins when you stop treating your habits as problems and start asking what pain they're protecting. You don't need more discipline. You need more honesty. That honesty is terrifying. When the screen goes dark, your silence gets louder. The feelings you buried begin to rise, the fear, the loneliness, the grief, not just of the present, but of every time you had to hide who you were to be accepted. Jung called this grief sacred. It's not weakness. It's the soul's memory of its own exile. And when you allow yourself to feel it fully, something remarkable happens. The performance starts to lose its power. You're no longer scrolling to avoid yourself. You're beginning to remember yourself. That's not failure. That's the beginning of wholeness. But this road isn't easy. Some days you'll pick up the phone out of reflex. You'll look for meaning in a screen that only knows your patterns, not your purpose. Maté explains, healing doesn't require perfection, only presence. It's about noticing when the escape starts and asking, what feeling am I avoiding right now? This question alone breaks the cycle. Jung would say, once something becomes conscious, it stops controlling you. You don't have to win against the habit. You only have to wake up inside it. That's how awareness turns into freedom, slowly but permanently. Modern culture tells you that silence is laziness, that stillness is unproductive. But these are lies sold by systems that profit from your disconnection. True healing is slow, quiet, unmarketable. It happens when no one's watching, when you start showing up for yourself instead of your followers, when you cry without posting it, when you breathe without documenting it. Jung believed that healing was not a return to how you were, but a becoming of who you truly are. And that can't happen inside the digital performance. It starts the moment you choose presence over perfection. So what does presence look like? Sometimes it looks like discomfort, like journaling instead of scrolling, like facing the shame you used to cover with entertainment, like saying no to another dopamine trap, even when you're anxious. These are not dramatic acts. They're quiet revolutions. Jung saw individuation as a return to your own center, not the center others expect you to orbit. Maté adds, people don't need more willpower. They need more safety to be who they are. And that safety doesn't come from apps, algorithms, or filters. It comes from within, from the truth you no longer run from. But here's the paradox. You can't reconnect until you first disconnect, not from people, but from the persona. Not from the screen, but from the story it lets you tell. Healing asks, what would remain if you stopped performing? What would rise if you stopped shrinking? These are uncomfortable questions, but they're also sacred doorways. Jung would say, what you most need is found where you least want to look. And that's why your pain is not your punishment. It's your path. The moment you stop avoiding it is the moment it starts guiding you. If any part of you feels tired of pretending, ask yourself this. What illusion am I still holding on to just to feel loved? You don't need to answer it now, but you do need to stop running from the question. Healing is not an escape, it's a return. And maybe this is where your return begins. If this chapter spoke to you, share your experience in the comments. What has social media made you forget about yourself? Your story might be the mirror someone else has been looking for. Now pause. Take a breath, without your phone, without distraction. Ask yourself, what are you really running from every time you reach for the screen? Is it boredom or loneliness? Is it fear of being forgotten or fear of remembering who you truly are? You don't have to delete your apps. You don't have to escape to the woods, but you do have to ask, what part of me have I silenced to survive in this digital performance? Healing begins with noticing, with one evening offline, one honest journal entry, one moment of discomfort you choose to feel instead of scroll past. So let this be your invitation, not to escape your life, but to come back to it, fully, awkwardly, beautifully, not as a performer, not as a persona, but as a whole human being. If this message resonated with you, don't let it disappear into the algorithm. Subscribe to the channel. Turn on the notifications. Not for me, but for you. So you never lose touch with these reminders, with these truths you've known all along but buried under noise. You don't need to become someone else. You just need to remember who you were before the world taught you to hide.